18th, 2026. We start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would rise and join me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do have some administrative announcements. The Planning Board continues to voluntarily allow remote participation. If any member of the Planning Board participates remotely, votes shall be by roll call. If you wish to attend this meeting remotely using a computer or smartphone, visit www.zoom.us. Enter meeting ID 754-663-912. You may also dial in by phone for audio only. Call area code 646-558-8656. Same meeting ID 754-663-912. If you have technical difficulty connecting, please call 603-845-5585. If you are on the phone, hit *9 to raise your hand to be recognized and *6 to unmute yourself once you have been recognized. We'll now introduce the members and staff present tonight. We have our town administrator, we have our town CFO, we have alternates, Mr. Appleton, Mr. Mousy, and Mr. Wood. We have planning director, Ms. Robidoux.
Good evening.
Planning clerk, Ms. Wilson. Member, Mr. Healy.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Minovini.
Good evening.
Vice Chair, Mr. O'Connor.
Good evening.
To my far left is Mr. Preventure, who handles all of the wonderful video magic.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Fishman.
Good evening.
Town Administrative Representative, Mr. Churchello.
Good evening.
Member, Mr. Pelletier.
Good evening.
Secretary, Mr. Malaby.
Hello.
And I'm Dave Nelson, I'm the chair. We have a couple of quick items. First, approval of minutes. We have both the February 4th regular meeting and the site walks of February 15th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Are there any noted errors or omissions?
Mr. Chair, seeing no one make any mention of changes, I move to accept the minutes as written.
Okay. Moved by Malaby.
Second.
Seconded by Pelletier to accept both sets of minutes as written. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Minovini?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Churchello?
Yes.
Mr. Pelletier?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. We do have an item of correspondence.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. In a classic case of be careful what you wish for, we've been soliciting for correspondence, and this week we have an 87-page town hazard mitigation plan. Just real quick, I'll read the memorandum. The Derry Town Council at its February 3rd, 2026 meeting approved the 2025 update to the Town of Derry Hazard Mitigation Plan. The plan is prepared in accordance with the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, Section 322, mitigation planning. This includes hazards such as dam failure, drought, extreme temperatures, severe winds, solar storms. And I've been reliably informed that this has been distributed to fire, planning, public works, and police departments in large red binders.
Okay, thank you. Under other business, we have a request for extension for the Grindhouse Meat Company, LLC, parcel ID 32025-003.
Okay, thank you. The Grindhouse project was approved by the Planning Board in September of last year. There's 2 conditions of approval still remaining. They're asking for additional time to establish escrow for the project and to address that one remaining administrative item. The current approval expiration date is March 3rd, and this is the first request to extend the approval. We would recommend that that be approved.
So what is the board's pleasure on that?
Mr. Chair, I move to extend the site plan approval granted to the Grindhouse, 43.5 Crystal Ave, PID 32025-003 on September 3rd, 2025 for an additional 6 months. The new expiration date of the conditional approval will be September 3rd, 2026.
Moved by Malaby, seconded by Pelletier to grant the extension as requested. Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mr. Minovini?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Churchello?
Yes.
Mr. Pelletier?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Chairs votes yes. And next we have the annual review of the capital improvement plan for fiscal years 27 through 32. Mr. Administrator, would you please give us your presentation.
Good evening, Planning Board members. My name is Michael Fowler. Many of you have some familiarity with. I'm here obviously with CFO Mark Fleischer as well. Both of us have had experience upwards of about 20 years in developing these plans. I've seen that as in the role of the Public Works Director, now in the Town Administrator's role. Mark has been in the Finance Department here for many years as well. So our goal here tonight is to provide a brief presentation to the Planning Board so that there's some awareness of what the future projects that the department heads are considering, the fiscal impacts, and our ability to fund those. What I believe you've all been presented with is there's about a 10-page Excel document which has all the specific items as we project out through the 6-year plan. You also have a narrative, which is a written narrative of many of the explanations of the categories that you see within the plan. And then finally, I've got a visual presentations that should tie that all together. So what I'd like to do is just walk our way through this, and then that can be a segue to discussion or questions after we're done here with this. So,
Mr. Provencher, is the administrator's mic on? Because it seems a little quiet. I mean, I know mine was extra loud, but just
let's
wanted to
see.
double check.
How's that? Maybe I'm not speaking into it.
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to remain close. Okay. So basically, the capital improvement plan is developed through department heads and senior staff, evaluating the operational needs of each department. Generally speaking, the replacement of existing units due to the age or the repair costs, enhanced service needs or an opportunity, bonded or grant-funded projects such as utility expansions, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then every year we talk about the ongoing maintenance in our roadway maintenance program through the Highway Division. The process that we employ is fairly straightforward. It's been ingrained like this for many years, but in January 2026, the department heads submit their needs and cost estimates to the CFO. In February, Mark and I review that, present this to the planning board middle of February, so we'll do this again in February of 2027. In March, there'll be another review process where we'll go through and look at the overall operating budget and combine that with the capital budget to make sure that we have the ability to afford. And then in April, we'll present to the town council through a number of different workshops, and the CIP has its own portion of the program that we go through and review that. And as it stands right now, May 5th, 2026, that's the projected date for the adoption of the CIP and the FY27 budget. All those purchases would be eligible as of July 1, 2026, if the town council passes the budget that evening. Okay, I just want to run through kind of what our prevailing scorecard is here. This is our tax rate, but obviously for our CIP, we're only looking at the highlighted section in yellow. So we're at $5.39. As everybody's aware, we do have a tax cap on the town side, so that does provide some constraints as far as what we are able to do both on operating and on capital. But we do work our way through this, but each year this is an exercise once we know what the allowable tax increase is pursuant to the trailing year CPI-U for the Northeast region. And for 2025, that number was 3.3%. So see in red there, 3.3%. It's a simple calculation where you look ahead and you can add from $5.39 last year to what we're going to project for next year would be $5.57. And everything flows backwards from there based on the valuation that we have coming in from our assessing department. When we go through this process, the CIP has to fit within the allowable increase without causing any issues to deplete our capital reserves, but also keeping our operations going as well. So now we start to get to some of the large numbers. So when you take a look at this large spreadsheet, calculates out to a total of $62.5 million. And the general fund is $30.4 million, the water fund $12.9 million, and the wastewater fund $19.9 million. So there's a lot of high dollar value items that are included within there. But when we get into the plan, we'll talk about some of the funding mechanisms, which somewhat softens the blow. We look at the specific FY27, the plan value is $26.6 million. So $7.4 million from the general fund, $11.6 million from the water fund, and $7.6 million from the wastewater fund. And just a reminder for everybody in the audience, the two water and wastewater funds are only funded by the ratepayers. So if you're not connected to water or sewer for whatever those reasons are, you live in an outlying area, that doesn't impact you relative to funding that, but obviously the general fund are all taxpayers in Derry. So talking about some of the funding mechanisms, one of the things that I think the town has been particularly creative with is having a pathway to a number of reimbursement grants. In many instances, those are up to 100% reimbursement. So we've had a strong history extending our water and our sewer systems through some grants. So for example, in FY27, the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project wants to grant $11.3 million in grant funding. I'm going to be going to the town council on March 3rd, and for the reason to get the approval of those funds, and that will help us with a number of enhancements to push water throughout the community. Eventually, that's that regional project that ties us in with Salem and Plastow. But there'll be some improvements at our water tank on Shenito Road. There'll be some miscellaneous pump station improvements and some piping that will be done. If you recall, roughly about 6 years ago, there was a main extension that was taken all the way from basically Ryan's Hill, Robert Frost Farm, all the way down to the Wyndham Town line. That was phase 1 of the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project. This is phase 2, but it certainly has had a great effect on enhancing our water system top to bottom, and we also get wheeling charges as a result of that business. We also look at all the vehicles and certain classes of equipment where possible. Instead of paying that up front in year 1, we look at trying to spread these payments out over a 5 or 7 year schedule. So much as you would do by going to a automobile dealer if you wanted to buy a truck, we do the same thing. Mark goes out and gets a competitive lease pricing, and we usually try to spread those out over 5 to 7 years for some maybe more predictable, instead of having spikes up and down. When you look at that total $62.5 million, $10 million of that is committed to our pavement management program, and that's been a proven winner for us in terms of how we've been able to manage the roads. I think every spring you see the benefits of what we do. We don't have the same number of potholes and major issues that people will complain about. It's almost that season, so watch the news and you're going to see stories of Manchester and Nashua and other neighboring communities. Derry has done, I think, a really good job for years. It's been supported each year in the operating budget at anywhere from $1.3 million to now we're looking at $1.65 million. And then finally, per our council policy, the unrestricted fund balance proceeds are distributed each year to each department's capital reserve fund. So there's 3 major departments: Public Works, Fire, and Police. They each have this formula based on the inventory that they have, compare it to the total inventory being requested over the 6-year period, and there's a percentage ratio that's pushed down, and that is used to also support the capital improvements program. So if you look at this chart, basically on the bottom, we run this analysis to look at the impact of the capital improvement project. So the takeaway on this is we're spending roughly $1.10 per year of general fund proceeds on on projects that are related to capital improvements. I would say that one of the things that we try to do is, if you notice, these numbers are relatively stable so that we don't have spikes, and by design, we don't want to have it be up and down because we know there's other priorities in the community that may be there on a certain year that wouldn't be there in another year. But the idea on the capital plan has been in the recent years to try to make this as flat as possible. This is probably a slide nobody can see in terms of it's just really small, but you do have this within your packet. This is just a summary of all the departments' capital improvements. So we can go into, I have a number of slides of some of the specific items, but I just wanted to throw that out there as we do keep a running tally of that. So we were talking about earlier the sustainability of looking at the fund balances for each department. So for the police, I've put out here basically looking ahead at the projections of the 6-year CIP, what we project for inflows from the fund balance, And what we're showing is there's an ending balance, which is in bold, and we're able to, although that balance is depleting, we're still able to keep ahead, and that's without other funding mechanisms that we may find along the way that may help us stretch out the program. So on the police side, we're very healthy. We're in good shape there. In DPW, we're starting with a balance of well over $1 million. That is going to obviously work its way through the system, but those are the current projected expenditures. And I can say that every year, that I've been the Public Works Director, that plan got shifted year over year just because sometimes you had trucks that would fail prematurely, and there were other years that you were able to leg another 2 years out because, there was a mechanical repair. So there's no, it's maybe more art than it is science when it comes to projecting the longevity of some of these vehicles. But certainly when you get up there into that 15 and 20-year range, you have to start to look at replacing some of your heavy equipment all the way across the board. Pickup trucks, we generally look to be about 10 years. A lot of that is rust as opposed to engine mechanical items, just because a lot of those trucks serve dual purposes. They run during the summer, and then they're out in snowstorms, and obviously they get exposed to corrosive materials. And then in the fire department, I did want to point out that, again, one of the things you will see is we have a starting balance that's over $1 million. If you look at 6 years out, we are showing we have a slight deficit in that particular item. But again, that's 6 years out. We'll talk about one of the drivers in the fire department, because there is a large single item, a fire truck engine that's valued at $1.3 million. So that kind of depletes a lot of, and then there's other operational needs that are encased within there. So we have some time to figure that out, but I want to be transparent about, what we're seeing. It's something that Mark and I have looked at and we're aware of, moving forward. All right, so let's go over some of the items in the police department. They're looking to replace 6 interceptors. These are their frontline units that they use. Basically, they're taking some of the items that they have that are 10 years out in their stock, out of warranty, and then they will be replacing those with hybrid unmarked fleets. So there's 6 of them, and that's done through a spread lease purchase program. There are $93,000 for some communication upgrades that we have a contract cost share with the fire department. And then there's also a cruiser replacement, another interceptor that's going to be upfit for one of our canine units. So those are the items, the major items that are identified in the police capital plan. In Public Works, got you a photo here of our sidewalk machine. I believe that's a 2012 unit. That's about a $200,000 unit. Here's another one of our frontline 5,500 pickup trucks, very versatile, needed in this environment. Those trucks do get beat up, as you can see, the plows and whatnot. That's a $165,000 unit. One of the things that this is probably a good segue to is in Public Works and fire and obviously in police, the prices for buying stock equipment have just gone crazy, and things that used to be, a truck like this used to be about $100,000 to $110,000 probably 5 years ago, and now the cab and chassis is $75,000 alone, and all the other attachments are in that $75,000 to $80,000 range. So things have really gotten expensive. Tariffs have had an impact on that. Anything that's imported from another country, like the sidewalk machine, that's a Canadian product, that becomes more and more difficult even to get parts for. So anything that's got a steel component to it, a metallic component, those have really seen some hefty increases, particularly post-COVID. This is a chipper. So this is one of our frontline chippers when we have trees that fall down. This goes out on the road. It's uses for routine maintenance. I believe that unit is almost 20 years old now. And then there's 3 trucks that we'll be replacing. They're in various divisions. I think one's in parks, one's in buildings and grounds, and the other one is in highway. Those trucks with a plow are equipped at $65,000. They're 2,500 trucks, and they're generally replacing trucks that are between 10 to 12 years old. And then the code enforcement division will be looking for a 1500 truck, basically to get on and off job sites. We were able to successfully get 2 electric vehicles through a grant last year. So we do have the health officer and one of our building inspectors uses those 2 electric vehicles. But in the budget, we are looking to bolster the code enforcement staff. That's been kind of a weakness in terms of that. We do want to support that position, the 3rd building inspector position, with a brand new vehicle so that they have the ability to attend to their business. And then in the Parks Department, it was suggested, given the number of games that we have now, baseball is pretty much a 7-month of the year program. You used to just play when you were April, May, June. Now there's a heavy summer program. Also, there's a heavy fall program. So we're constantly out on the fields. And one of the suggestions was to assist our labor and to force multiply and to purchase a ball field groomer that will be able to go through and drag the infield more readily than by just doing it by hand. And then the transfer station, our treasurers, we formerly had this fabric structure which fell down in a windstorm roughly 3 years ago, and we'd like to put up a brand new structure. And same thing, what used to be probably $150,000 estimate, when we put out to bid, the prices were astronomical. So this is a new effort to try to come back around and build. It's a basic structure. There's nothing special to it. It's a steel building. But again, the prices of things have just gone through the roof. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, each year the Highway Division goes through and analyzes the worst roads in the community, coordinates those with utility construction so that obviously we're not putting in a fresh coat of pavement down and then ripping it up 2 years later to put in a sewer main or water main. So sometimes we defer based on what we have for upcoming utility projects, but this has been funded at $1.65 million, or is the request for fiscal 27. And keep in mind, too, that the price of pavement has doubled roughly in the last 10 years. We used to see prices in $40 a ton. Now that's $80 a ton. So the yield has been diminished, but our ability to raise funds hasn't kept up with that. But we're doing okay. Our PCI rating, which is the pavement condition index, is in as high as it's been. It's 88, which is a proof that we're really doing a good job at using the money well that we receive. And in the fire department, obviously, Engine 2 replacement at $1.3 million. Now, one of the challenges in the fire service nowadays is the long lead times and just the plain old price of inflation. I've seen some stories talking about, lead times anywhere from 3 to 5 years when you order a piece of equipment and apparatus. So we're going to look at those. There's obviously some challenges that have to be analyzed, but we obviously want to equip it the way that we need it for Derry's needs. So I'll be in consultation with the chief as far as what that sets up, but this is in the FY27 budget. We may not get this until 3 years from now. And then this is just a photo of an ambulance replacement. So basically it's just under $500,000, and as you can imagine, the ambulance has a lot of sensitive equipment that, because it carries medications, it has specialized equipment inside, and it has to be fit up to usually a 650 chassis of that nature. So again, maybe less time dependency, but again, these ambulances are on the road constantly providing medical service, and this is a designated upgrade. In the water division, I don't have any great photos to show you, but it's more just a narrative. We talked about the regional water, and phase 1 was 1 million gallons per day. Phase 2A has begun. There's some work in Londonderry along Old Derry Road. And also we're working on some tank improvements on Chenito Road. $11.3 million is in the CIP, and that's going to be to support Phase 2A and Phase 2B. The way to look at that is that the town's getting 100% subsidy on this project, and it's going to be enhancing our water system in areas that we can either expand or replace existing infrastructure. And as I had mentioned before, there'll be a vote coming up on March 3rd, 2026 to approve that by Town Council. In the wastewater division, two major projects are on the list here. 1,500 feet of effluent force main, that's valued at $1.4 million. And then in kind of an economic development project to move sewer and a pump station from the Frost Farm in a southerly direction towards Ryan's Hill. There's been a desire to advance that project. Town has a grant of 80% of $4 million, which is an original estimate. EPA is going to provide us with a $3.2 million grant. The project is under design as we speak, and that's where we're going to take the next 6 months. The estimated construction cost right now is $6.1 million. So there'll be some coverage unless we find another funding source out of the wastewater proceeds. But again, the good news is a significant portion of this is covered by grant funding. And that is the summary of the plan. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or explain anything maybe that you have any questions or concerns over.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. That was very nicely presented. I like the fact that our contribution is leveling out again. I noticed in the last couple of years that it kind of bumped up, but has now come back to a very stable contribution, so I think that's great. Just a question, kind of wearing my planning hat. One of the major things I'm sure you're aware of in the state as well as the nation is housing, affordable housing. And one of the things that supports that is the availability of water and sewer. So can you give us any color on whether the water and sewer projects that are in the plan maybe have any, positive impact on the ability to develop that kind of housing stock that New Hampshire needs?
So I think in a generic sense, I think the one project that we have ongoing right now is the Shenito Road towards Rand Shepherd Hill. That's going to support existing residential. I don't see that there's going to be any opportunities there per se for densified housing or whatnot, because most of those zones are in the 3-acre zone or similarly zoned. When you head south along Route 28 on Ryan's Hill for sewer, there are some opportunities. There are some areas there in the West Running Brook zone. There's also opportunities in that commercial district as you move your way further south. As far as water is concerned, that particular situation for the Southern New Hampshire water is only going to be providing the ability to pass more water through. But if there were a developer that were to come through with a viable project in a certain district, we would have town-wide ability to, our tank is going to be more sustainable. We're going to have better feeds coming in and redundancy along those lines. So I liken it to nothing that's a specific target, but if there were, zoning changes or somebody were to come with a project, we certainly would have the capacity and the capability to support that.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions or comments from other members?
I do, actually.
Yep,
So
just
can
get
we
your
go
mic
back-
up there.
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
So can we go back to the Ryan's Hill project?
Sure.
So what was, you kind of brushstroke through it, and I was trying to follow you as quickly as I could. So what was, you said from Ryan's Hill south down towards Wyndham?
No, I'm sorry. So the sewer project, right now, the sewer main is located at the Robert Frost Farm. So what this project would do is it would extend it to the top of Ryan's Hill. So think of Pete's Scoop,
Yep.
the Dunkin' Donuts. There would be a pump station in a low spot down by the Rockingham Acres, the new wedding venue.
Halebrook?
Yep, Hyla-Brook, exactly. Yep. So that sewer project would support that area. The section between Robert Frost Farm to the Wyndham Town line on Route 28 already has a water main down there. So there's water service available currently. And that was part of a project about 6 years ago that the state granted to Derry as part of the regional water expansion. And then also there was some funds for MTBE mitigation as well. So we already have water all the way down 28 to the Wyndham Town line. Sewer would only extend to as far as Pete's Scoop under this particular project.
And is the hope that residents that abut that would be able to link into that? Is that what the goal is?
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we go through any sewer or water project for that matter, there's outreach to the nearby businesses and residences asking them if they intend to tie in,
Yep.
and then we provide them with the information as far as the cost, and because obviously there's an assessment that goes along with the tie-in depending on what the funding source is.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot, sorry if I'm doing this. Do you have any roundabout numbers about how, so that project, like you said, went through and is done?
Yep.
And they're going to continue with it. Do you have any numbers as to how many people took advantage of that?
On the water side,
Yeah.
it's less than 10, I believe, on Route 28. It just, for whatever reason, I think it's expensive. Unless you have a problem with your well, that's generally the time that people will step up and say, okay, I really need this now. I want to tie in. But it's been less. Like, we have a water main that we extended in East Area about 15 years ago, and we still don't have that many people interested in hooking in. But as people's wells have failed, they do the economic analysis and say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to drill a new well. I'll tie into municipal water. And same with the sewer. Usually with the septic system failures, that's the impetus to tie in.
And are you hoping for, again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but are you hoping for, you said you're going to be putting in sewer lines there.
Yep.
Are you hoping for greater than 10% people saying, yeah, heck with having a septic tank, I'd rather just...
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we've heard out there relative to the planning is that, number one, there's a couple of parcels that might benefit from having sewer on that. In other words, people have said, I have a current use, but if I have sewer, it gives me the opportunity to potentially upgrade and bring something better, bigger, higher use. And then secondly, we have had a couple of businesses that have struggled and said, yeah, we would like to tie in on day one. So we are aware that there is some interest in getting into that as soon as possible.
Okay, sorry, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I didn't
no,
mean to
you're
put you
welcome.
on the spot. Thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very nice presentation. My question is related to cable, and I believe the funding comes from those that are on the Infinite?
Yep.
Xfinity.
It's Xfinity. How is that stable? Is it going up? It's going down?
Unfortunately, that is definitely a declining balance. I had an opportunity to sit with Owen roughly 2 weeks ago to review, the status. And one of the discussions we had was, being sensible about looking forward in the capital improvements that they need. Now, in the cable system, the revenues are definitely declining because of cord cutting, right? There's no doubt, and I don't know that people are going to be coming back to Comcast once you get your YouTube television or your other Netflix. People, figure it out, and they're not generally migrating back to the old coaxial cable, Xfinity, Comcast, whatever you want to call that now. So this is something that is on our radar screen that we've discussed, and we will be talking in the fiscal 27 budget to the town council. And we brought it up with them last year to be aware that, it's partly capital, but it's also operating in terms of that. And I think the core question is, the philosophy had always been cable was kind of a self-sustaining fund to support the cable operations. Now, if we've reached a point where the revenues from the franchise fee are less than what our operational and capital needs are, there's going to have to be a policy decision by the town council about, are we going to subsidize that with general fund proceeds? And I think that's more of a policy decision on that front. But again, one could argue that even the meetings that we're doing here, there's a governmental purpose that serves 34,000 people. You've got open government, you've got all, every meeting you want to see it on demand. So I think that's a discussion we're going to be having at the upcoming budget.
Okay, and the only other question I have is on the EVs, with the upcoming budget and so forth. So there should be a reduction, hopefully, in gasoline. How's it look from where you're going with it right now?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've had, I think, about a 6-month history with the EVs. I've given Jeff kind of an update on where we stand. When we go into the budget, we provide like a general department number based on all the usage. I think those vehicles had a certain amount. I want to say they were like $1,500 a year in gasoline expenditures. I think we're trending more towards about $800 in a year in electrical usage. So again, that's been a favorable outcome for those two vehicles. I would say, just talking about energy efficiency, one other area that I think we're going to see some major savings when that solar project goes online. I'll be talking to the council about those projected savings, because all those electrons that are electricity that's generated will be distributed to 30 town buildings at a much lower rate of 6.5 cents per kilowatt hour as compared to what everybody else's bill is for Eversource.
Right. Thank you.
Other comments, Mr. Churchill?
I'll be done.
Oh,
No,
wait.
I'll be done after this. I'm probably.
Well, no. We're going to let everyone have a first chance. Then you can go back for an alibi.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. First off, I want to say that the road program, I'm happy that we're keeping the same money in there. I've noticed some other towns, I have a bad habit of watching other towns do other different things, and they keep cutting back the road program. And Derry, like you had mentioned, Derry's always been on the forefront of that. We don't really see some of the problems that these other towns have, and they let these roads go, and then they've got a bond. So I like seeing that. As far as the EV equipment, we need charging stations, correct?
in terms, so we have the units here.
2, 3?
There's 4 chargers on 2 pedestals.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember, those 2 of them were Tesla, right?
Yeah, we've since changed them to universal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, on the police side, I notice the number is 829 for FY 2026. And I know in the past, police have done a really excellent job getting discretionary spending from Senator Shaheen.
Mm-hmm.
And since she's like the number 2 player in appropriations, and she's got a small amount of time left, you know, are we hitting that hammer as well?
We are. As a matter of fact, I spoke to Chief Fioli probably about 3 weeks ago. They attended a seminar yesterday on online. There's another round coming up on March 4th, I think, or March 8th. It's due within the next couple of weeks for a congressionally directed spending round. And one of the things he's looking to see is if in the future there may be some opportunities. I think it's one of their units that they use for when they go on crime scenes, so their crime scene van or whatnot. So he's looking at that. But again, I think your general theme has been any place that we can find grant funding. I mean, we are knocking doors down all over the place because if we can get 80%, 50%, it makes sense and it cuts down on the blunt, version towards the taxpayer.
Absolutely. I'm just concerned that once she leaves, we don't know who's going to be on that committee. Right now, she's on that committee. She's like the number 2 ranking senator, so she does quite a lot of bringing some money home. So
yeah, we've had some really good luck going through the CDS program.
yeah. And then do you have a time on the Ryan Hill sewer?
So what it looks like
Roughly.
right now is, like I said, we're going to be doing design work throughout the course of the next year. And I don't think we're going to start construction on that until calendar 27.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the board? You get your alibi.
Thanks. Sorry. With the transfer station trailer storage, does it have a page number? It was just this one? Yep. So I think you had mentioned that the previous one was of a cloth and it just kind of got caught up in the wind, so we're going to do away with that. This picture probably doesn't do it justice. Is this like aluminum? This red one is the one that I'm looking at here, sir. Is this aluminum and is this going to be bolted or anchored or cemented? You know what I mean?
Both and all. So to go back in history, what ended up happening was prior to my time, there was a fabric structure, and I don't know how it stood up for as long as it did, but think about what you would have for like a garage covering up maybe a motorhome or something like that. And it held for probably 18 years. We had a strong windstorm in March of 2023. And it collapsed under some snow load. What we're looking to do is now a real pre-engineered building, like a Morton building, where there's engineered stamped drawings, footings, truss members that are solid, and then obviously a skin that will hold up. If you notice at the transfer station, we use the color red just because I think that's what we've always done down there. But those buildings we have held up pretty good, and that's been in that same class of the pre-engineered building.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Fenner, do we have any online questions?
Seeing none rise online, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate the information.
All right, we appreciate it, and if there's any questions that come up, feel free to reach out, and I appreciate the time with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have to vote on anything, right?
No, we don't get to. We can make suggestions.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, so after that, Planning Director and Chairman updates.
I really have none. The next meeting will have one lot line adjustment plan for public hearing. And that's it.
Okay. And I don't have anything, so we'll move on to workshop number 3. We had conducted a district site walk, and I'm happy to say that most of the planning board was there. So we got to see firsthand some of the hand-wavy things we were talking about. So maybe we could start by going around and having everyone kind of recap their takeaways from the site walk as a starting point for the further discussion.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that was pointed out by one of the planning board members was the parking. I know we're not looking for any like head-in parking, but even if there's someone parking sideways in front of a building, if we allow enough frontage there, 8 or 10 feet in, they could then park sideways in front of that building. So I think that's something that we should discuss a little bit later on. And the other thing, we talked a lot about the elevation from different spots on the walk. I mean, that whole area is pretty well developed now. I don't know, we put in plans. I don't know how soon something's really going to be changing, but I think it's a good idea to look at that and change it a little bit based on what we saw. But I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I saw was that, we could still have, if we're trying to get rid of the parking, you could still have someone park right in front, just sideways, not head in, if we put it too far back.
Yeah, we did even see some very creative parking where there was sort of half in the snowbank, half in the street. The other thing I'll point out, we actually, I think it was Mr. Chase and Mr. Pelletier had brought a tape measure. We actually took some measurements. And why we didn't really know exactly where the end of the right-of-way was. Oftentimes, the right-of-way goes into what is lawn. And so just be aware that when we set a front setback, it's from the edge of the property line, which may already be 4 or 5 feet from the edge of the pavement. So if we get, 8 feet from the property line, it could be, 12 feet or more from the roadway. Yeah, I mean, some of those people, I just noticed on Pearl, some of those people who were in the snowbank are still there. Yeah. Mr. Minivini.
Yeah, it was definitely beneficial to get a lay of the district. I hadn't really walked down all the streets that we had walked down previously. I agree that I'm concerned about parking. I don't want head-in parking in front of any businesses. And yeah, if we make that setback too narrow, I think we're going to have. I think it's going to be a mess in the winter with people parking parallel to the road. So prior to that site walk, I was kind of leaning towards a little bit of a setback and just not worrying about people parking parallel to the road. Now I've kind of rethought that. I will say I'm on this elevation levels in the CBD. We have 328 feet for the Opera House. Do you know, is that the base of the Opera House, or is that the maximum
top.
height?
The top.
Okay. So I think personally, I'm not too concerned with allowing structures to be a little taller, a bit taller than that. But that's my personal prerogative. And that's all I have.
Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, I want to probably follow the lead off of Mr. Dan. And I agree with the chair also, is that if you had more than 8 foot out in front of the house, you are basically encroaching right back on the street. And again, the snowbankings was a big help, showing that how dangerous that's going to be. Especially we got another snowstorm for up to 5 inches coming in this Sunday. So that will make it even worse. As far as the height in the Opera House, I was part of the original one that we end up with the 328, and I would like to see it stay that way there. And based on the analysis that the director did, I don't think I've seen anyone else in all these little numbers here that exceed the 328, and I'd be comfortable with that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Fishman?
A few items. I think it was definitely clear that if we're setting a maximum building height, it should be based upon altitude, just with the variety of, topographic base elevations. There's no one story that limitation that's going to work for everything. So I concur with that general sentiment. Obviously, parking is a huge subject of discussion and concern. One of my hesitations with with the general sense of limiting street front parking, though I don't propose a solution here, so I apologize up front, but with the minimum lot width of 50 feet, and I believe it's an 18-foot wide requirement for one way. We saw a lot of situations with parking in the back, but you have to access that unless you're on a corner lot, but you have to access that through, a small driveway on the side of the house or a building. That reduces the actual structure's width to a very small size. And so, it brings up the question of, where are people going to park? Are we going to be limiting developments other than consolidation developments by there's simply not enough places to park, and if you're forcing the parking in the back, that makes the building very limited in width. So I'm not saying like I said, I don't have a proposal right now, but it is definitely seems like a bit of a concern in some areas. And others, obviously there's larger lots, a lot of corner developments that wouldn't be affected by that as harshly. But I think we need to just be mindful of that.
Mr. Churchill?
Yeah, first off, I want to say I enjoyed the hot chocolate. It was really good. One of the things that I would hope is that we kept things very flexible, because what I noticed were the lots were all different sizes. Some are large, some are small. I wouldn't want to pigeonhole certain parcels, especially if there's smaller parcels that are getting bought together and developed. I don't know how we'd go about getting that flexibility as far as parking in the back or the front or whatnot, but I don't see it as one size fits all, It's really going to depend, and if there is a corner street, that makes a difference. As far as the height's concerned, excuse me, I'm really interested in seeing the Abbott Court project develop, to see, just from a visual standpoint, how high that gets, because I think that's sort of the linchpin of redeveloping, and then you'll see it spread. But obviously, I think the elevation should be measurable. In other words, I don't want to see anything sticking out. But that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pelletier?
So I live downtown. I was fairly familiar with the area, but I thought it was an excellent opportunity to look at it from a different lens, maybe. I was excited about the potential that was downtown. That kind of surprised me a lot. Reference to the parking, I want to echo Mr. Churchello's comments. I think we need to be flexible. A lot of those lots are not uniform. There's not going to be any solution that fits all of it, especially even street to street or even parcel to parcel. Reference to the heights, if we're hearing from developers that it's not economically viable to fit these height restrictions, I think we need to be flexible with that as well. When you look downtown, there's not really a uniform height of everything. There are buildings that even now stick out when you look. So I'm not too concerned if there was going to be a project that was going to be taller than, say, the Opera House. So, thank you.
Mr. Maloney?
I also, like some of the other members, I enjoyed, spending time with the board, but actually walking the district, it's amazing. You drive on some of those streets 1,000 times, and then you have a chance to walk it, and you pick up on details that you miss. In terms of parking, I was already in favor, I believe, of a tighter setback, if we're talking redevelopment. And I think we saw it. We were outside one of the businesses on Birch Street, and we saw someone who parked head in, having to back out into the road. And I drive a little sedan, and, the snowbanks are up, and you can't see anything, and you're trying to back in. So I'd be in favor of something tighter, 5 to 8 feet, because we're talking about instances of redevelopment. And, if it's there now and it's going to stay, it's going to stay. But in terms of, what we want it to become, I think we'd want to go for a uniform look. In terms of height, I'm not really sure where we ended up. I know there was talk about, do we want to say a certain number of stories, and what is a story, or elevation? I'm just thinking if I'm on, that intersection at CVS, Crystal and Birch, and looking up, I would think it would be nice to have everything. You don't really want to look up and see a huge tower in the distance. So I think I'd be in favor of altitude, using that as the measuring stick. And we've just heard a few comments about parking and actually where is it feasible. Like if we could say it sounds great to have parking in the back, or we've seen along the sides of some buildings. I was wondering, and this could be a foolish comment, and I'd be looking to the planning director for this one, but we've talked about density bonuses. Would it be possible to write something about bonuses for parking? If you're able to provide a certain number of spots, you're able to have things at a certain elevation. Can you have an extra floor or something like that? So totally conceptual at this point, but it was just a thought I had in the back of my head.
Thank you.
So that's all I've got for now.
Mr. Appleton?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Derry, so I'm super familiar with the area, but it was a very different experience with, the staff and the members of the board, how much knowledge you guys have about the town and about specifically who owns areas, who's thinking about redeveloping, who's planning on selling, things like that. And so, yeah, to see those areas that I've seen 1,000 times, but through the lens of the planning board was definitely very useful. And I think, seeing all those cars parking on streets where theoretically there wouldn't have been enough setback for parking spaces, but they've clearly found enough space to fit the car in, so they're fitting there. Yeah, I think that was very helpful, and definitely gives a lot of insight to the stuff that we're talking about in here.
Mr. Mousy?
I don't have a lot other to add than what has already been said this evening, but what was most beneficial was just to walk the lay of the land. Like people have been saying here tonight, I've driven down South Ave and Pearl Street, use it to get to wherever I want to get to in town, and I don't recognize and see until you actually walked it. So that helped a lot. And another thing that really helped me a lot too was, and I had asked the question when we were standing there by the church, was the whole fact of the elevation. Until you actually sit in that pocket, you don't get to see, okay, what's it going to look like? How's that? So that was very beneficial for me.
Mr. Wood?
I wasn't able to make it for the actual walkthrough. My concern is going to be parking regardless. People will park, whether there's room or not. Obviously, you saw people in snowbanks. Even if there is a 5-foot setback, they're going to find a way to park there. So I personally feel giving them a little more space is probably safer for everyone as a whole, but that's about all I have.
So I have a couple of maybe framing thoughts. Typically, when we are doing something, especially in a high visibility downtown district, it's often after we've done design charrettes and got a lot of citizen input as to vision. And so a lot of this gets driven from the vision of what we want to see as opposed to what accommodations we want to make to a developer who wants to do X, Y, Z. And those things are always in tension, right? So I think that's true with the building height. The fact that nothing can be higher than the Adams Memorial Building, I don't think it's an absolute issue. I think it's, I don't know, everyone's seen the photos of some colonial era historic building wedged between two skyscrapers. That's an extreme, but I think that was what was driving the folks to say, I don't want high rises dwarfing some of the more classic New Englander style downtown buildings in Derry. That's a vision decision. And I think we need to think about what we currently see as the vision and whether the old vision is still valid, and then take that into account. Parking is also a vision in the TBOD, the actual core of the downtown. We require a 0-foot maximum setback. You have to be on the sidewalk. You have to put your parking behind, other than on-street parking. The town spent a lot of money moving all of the electric utilities and the phone utilities behind the buildings, and putting in the fancy, wrought iron street lamps, so that has a very kind of almost turn-of-the-century look, harkening back to when Derry's downtown was in its heyday. So again, that's a vision thing. I think for a given number of square feet of foundation and a given lot size, you're going to have to figure out you want the cars in front or in back. And I don't think moving it from the front to the back is going to change the number of cars particularly. The question is the vision what we want? A bunch of parallel parking in front of every structure as opposed to seeing the nice structures for themselves. The comment was made about 18-foot wide driveways. I would like to see if we have some ability to negotiate some of that. A lot of that has to do with major developments where you get fire trucks around to a position on the building where they can deploy the trucks. All of these lots are small. They're going to deploy the trucks from the street. So if that's an issue, maybe we can see how much flexibility exists with codes and the regs to not require a major throughway in order to get to the back. But I do support not having a bunch of cars parked in front of the building. I don't like the Cumberland Farms model for most of the downtown. As to the height, I think we could certainly go 20 feet above the Adams Building. We just don't want skyscrapers interspersed with our more classic buildings. So I think we need to think about vision. I think we then need to think about flexibility and regulations and how we accommodate it. Obviously, if it's going to be a in situ conversion, somebody's going to take a house and turn it into a dentist's office or chiropractor's office, they're not going to move the structure. It's a different calculation if someone is buying 2 lots and doing a tear down and building something else, because then it's more of a greenfield. You can plan it the way you'd like to see it planned. So that's my thoughts on this.
Could I
Ms.
offer
Robideau.
just a We were kind of tossing ideas around today about, we recognize that that's a concern, those very short front yard setbacks, and having the cars parking parallel to the buildings. One of the things that we had kind of tossed around in the office today was maybe putting in, if we had a variable setback in the front, having a restriction that the only thing that can be in the front is landscaping, so that people can't park there, because now it's a code violation.
So that sounds good on paper as a planning exercise. My observation on the ground as I was walking around is none of those places that had that much space in front of the building used it for landscaping. So there would have to be what would be the criteria for granting wider or narrower? The other thing I'm actually curious about is why are we even changing it? There's got to be some benefit to the town of making it more flexible for developers to do what they want to do, perhaps at the expense of the citizens' vision of what they want their downtown to look like. So is there some confidential, negotiation for somebody to come in who really just needs this? I'm curious as to why we're doing it.
Quite honestly, as we're working with, 23 Central comes to mind. The original plan that we saw that went to the ZBA had a three-story building, commercial in the front with apartments going like kind of L-shaped to the back. Parking was along the side and to the rear. In that neighborhood, they had to go to did they go to the ZBA for, I think they went to the ZBA for other relief. They had the building right at the 8 feet. It's so out of place. It's so out of place. We have that 8-foot maximum, and not in the CBD, even when we measured, most of the buildings are set back at least 15 feet from the right-of-way. You're putting stuff right on the road.
We measured 15 feet from the edge of the pavement, but my comment is, I don't think that's from the right-of-way.
Correct. But
I think it's probably more like, in many cases, 4 feet.
Right. So it just, in some cases when they're doing the redevelopment, it just changes the character of the neighborhood, and it's okay to do that because architecture changes over time, and the way things look and feel are going to organically change over time. But I think in our core, I think the vision has always been to keep it Derry. So, just to have these really tall buildings right on it's different in the downtown because you've got the people scale and we don't go any higher than X. But as you start to spread out, to have buildings right on the sidewalk like that, I don't know, the feel of it doesn't feel right. And there are some instances where you're having, I'm going to go back to the Birch Street example. They had a development plan and they wanted the buildings set back a little bit from the road to give them more flexibility on their lot, but our regulations were requiring them to be right on Birch Street with that structure.
When they started to do the planning, did they read our regulations first?
They did. They did.
Oh, damn, I don't like that.
But
okay,
that's
honest.
I think people need the ability to be able to work and flex what they have and try and do it in keeping with what looks and fits and feels in Derry. It just doesn't, I feel like every time someone comes to us with a plan, we're like, well, you got an 8-foot maximum. They're like, well, it's not going to work. Well, then you have to go to the ZBA, and no offense to the ZBA, but our planning is being done by variance, and I don't think that's appropriate either.
So if the only people we could attract to spend money on development in Derry do not value the citizens' vision for the architectural facade the streetscape, and they go to the ZBA, and the ZBA gets them the variances, you're right, it is an exercise in futility. I'm saying that I'm probably not going to support giving up on the streetscape vision just because it's inconvenient for the people who want to come and build. Otherwise, why have zoning, why have visioning? It's sort of like when we did all the visioning for the Gateway District, we paid a lot of attention to what the residents wanted, to the chagrin of many, at least certain number of developers. So I'm thinking that we need to pay the same amount of respect in the CBD. So I'm still a little skeptical about allowing 15, 20-foot front yards and then trying to hope that it becomes a park rather than parking.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say, I mean, honestly, I think anything more than 15 is too much. But allowing some flexibility, I kind of like Mr. Chase's idea of having that kind of window, like 0 to 15, because it allows some flexibility on some of the lots that might be a little bit odd-shaped.
Well, I spoke with Mr. Chase after the walk, and he kind of agreed with me. He had changed his opinion on how much flexibility. He was not able to make it tonight, so.
I don't know if this is something we could do, but would it be possible to allow a larger setback for narrower lots, for lots that, say, wouldn't be wide enough to get a driveway to the back of the building for parking behind?
Well, I'm going to guess most of we could, but I'm going to guess most of the buildings I saw had a driveway because the houses in those days had driveways to park in, or they may even have had garages in the backyard.
They were plowed.
Now, there are probably some lots narrow enough so that it was only on-street parking, but typically houses of that, kind of Victorian era, they did have side driveways, and a lot of them had garages in the back. They may not still be there, but when they were first constructed, they existed. So I guess the question is, if you have a narrow lot and you allow a greater setback, what would you anticipate the purpose of that to be?
My thinking would be just to allow a little more flexibility on those narrow lots so that if say, someone wanted to tear down and tear something down without combining with another lot, they'd be able to put parking in front where it might not be feasible to have a wider building and drive around to the back. I'm just thinking adding flexibility without compromising on the majority of the lots.
If we decide that we're going to do that, then we have to look very carefully at the mechanisms. What we do in the West Running Brook District comes to mind, where there are no hard rules, or just however the planning board feels that night, without many objective, specific criteria, which I think can be a problem for folks. Well, why'd you give it to him and not me? Well, he gave us a good story. So I think we'd have to work hard on crafting the specific criteria for granting that flexibility, but I believe it is possible to legally do that.
Okay.
Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing we need to keep in mind is that, and I haven't looked at it for a long time, is the Abbott Court building and all the parking. Because I remember during the presentations that they anticipate a lot of open parking, and that the people that would be living there, they would have a location for them to park too. But typically, most of them going out to work 8 o'clock, come back at 5. And so there's a lot of availability of all the parking during the needs when people are out going to the restaurants or shopping and so forth. So we still need to bring, even though it's going to be 2 or 3 years from now, we should still keep it in the back of our minds as far as how it's going to fit into the overall picture of the downtown.
Sure. Other second thoughts?
I'm going to agree with Mr. O'Connor because. Wow. I mean,
I have that in writing.
Isn't that pretty good? I mean, I'm an old townie here, so I mean, looking at the downtown in the CBD for many years and trying to get businesses in here and all that. I mean, now it's really coming to fruition. This is a big project. So I do think it's going to spur on additional interest, and more money will be spent. And so I don't want to chase any of that away because, let's face it, the downtown is older. There are a lot of older buildings, and they are ripe for redevelopment. And I've always said that. So I think that, the parking that we're going to have is going to bring more people in for the restaurants. I think you'll see more excitement there. Maybe more business will come into the downtown. So that's the question I asked last time about whether we should focus in on that area and then see if development goes this way or vice versa.
Well, I mean, what we're being asked to do is to make a district-wide change, so unless we're going to make that another sub-district.
I mean,
don't
one of
know how we
the
do
other
that.
things that I noticed, to be honest, the sections that have all the big houses that are multifamily, those are probably going to be the last to be redeveloped because, let's face it, those are probably landlords that don't live on the property. Not in all cases, but I'm thinking they don't live there. That's how they make their money, passive income. So they're not really interested in redeveloping right now. They're interested in cash flow. Maybe the smaller houses and the smaller house lots may want to combine and do stuff, but there's a mix there. So I just think it's more of a timing thing as we see it. Abbott will spur some of that on, but that's my opinion.
I think it's worth pointing out that there are the small house lots that may be constrained in terms of how they do a conversion. But we did see a lot of already commercial buildings in the Central Street, Central Court area.
Right.
That, and we talked about, who owned them and how well they are and who their heirs are and all that kind of good stuff about when they might come on the market. That seems to me a much greater opportunity for a knockdown and a more scalable, more sizable development, where it would be perfectly reasonable to say, hey, have a parking lot out back. And I wouldn't want to make it just too easy. Well, I would rather have the strip mall model because customers want to be able to park within eyesight of their front door they're going in. So I'm going to put my building at the back of the lot and put the parking in front because that's what I think will attract more customers. And if they have a big enough lot to flip it, I don't want to encourage them to do that, I'll be honest.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. I mean, we've touched on the subject of flexibility and the thing that comes to mind in all of this is there is a large difference in the character and, well, certainly the lot size, shape, orientations, et cetera, throughout the CBD. So I would be most comfortable with any kind of proposed changes that potentially scale towards the size of the lot or proposed lot. So again, I'm not sure to what degree we can specify that, but that seems like it could achieve the best of both worlds, where we're looking at a redevelopment. It's of several lots being combined or one large tear down, and that's our opportunity for a large multifamily or a commercial space to specify, because of this lot size, parking has to be in the rear, however we go about doing that. Whereas we don't, we allow for the flexibility of smaller lots. Someone wants to build a nice house there, but because it's a smaller lot, they have more flexible setbacks. Maybe it allows them to have front parking, but it's not as offensive because it's similar to what's already there. It's a small house. We're not forcing and removing improvement opportunities on some of the smaller lots. Again, it's a tricky subject just mostly because there's such a variety of different lot sizes, shapes, streets.
Yes, there are. And when you get down to actually writing ordinances and regulations and legalese, flexibility is a dirty word because it means ambiguity and open-endedness that usually gets you into ZBA or a court.
Well,
we'd have to be very careful about how we structured that.
I fully agree. And to your point about maintaining a vision, I don't think that, at least my interpretation and my definition of flexibility in this case is not give a wide range and see what happens, because it's going to be a race to the bottom, so to speak. So I agree that that flexibility would have to be very structured. And again, maybe lot size is one of the only or primary levers we can use. It would be interesting to look at other, ways to classify a lot and have it fit into a different requirement.
So I guess what we're maybe talking about is having a front setback that's an equation that includes the square footage of the lot itself, as opposed to a single number or even just a range of numbers. Pick what you like. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, though not strictly or not necessarily just lot size. Again, we saw a lot of corner lots. There's a lot of corner lots there where you could very easily put one side as all front parking in that rule, but so maybe it's more than just strictly lot size. Maybe there's other lot configurations or, things having to do with what street is the frontage, or, do you have 2 streets worth of frontage, et cetera. There's a lot of thought that would have to be put into this, but that might strike the balance where we can achieve the vision, but not prohibit.
So what we're effectively doing is we're allowing a variance to what the vision dictates, only the planning board decides it instead of the zoning board?
Basically.
I'm not sure that's any better.
But it's not a variance in that, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not a variance because it's something that's been planned for.
It's a conditional use permit. And as I say, we haven't actually gotten burned yet, and maybe I will be proven wrong, but I think the extent to which we make everything a conditional use permit in the West Running Brook district makes it very hard to have a quasi-judicial process, because it's all about what the planning board can be convinced to do on a given evening.
I suppose I wasn't leaning even towards a CUP, more almost a tiered structure of setback requirements and whatever other requirements we feel we can use to help achieve the vision. But, a one-size-fits-all for the CBD feels like there's going to be it's going to be, too hard to, I don't think there is one-size-fits-all. And so we may omit development opportunities, improvement opportunities in pursuit of the vision. And so it's not compromising on the vision, but making the regulations more surgical. There's going to be lots that, that may never be developed because of their size, but they may be improved upon. And I'm struggling to come up with a good example at the moment.
So, I have said this many times. The planning board has, on a number of occasions, been visionary and tried to entice a particular kind of development by creating regulatory opportunities. The Karas property down on the south end of 28, making it medical office business. And it was all ledge, and there was no water and no sewer. No one wanted to put a business there. So we turned it back to residential. I think while I was off the board, there was a move to expand the TBOD out into the CBD, and that sucked up Franklin Street. And then we solved that by moving it back into CBD. So the planning board has occasionally tried to lead by regulatory carrot. It hasn't always yielded development, because people have to, voluntarily come up and say, I see an economic opportunity here to make money, because honestly, that's how this works. So we do have to be a little careful about being too smug about, oh, well, we have a vision, let's wait until someone who shares our vision comes along. So it looks like the majority of the board wants to structure something that has quote-unquote flexibility. I think the trick will be to do that, and maybe maybe what we ought to work on between now and the next workshop is some language that allows that, but isn't, oh, yeah, whatever you want tonight based on how we, perceive the case you make. I don't think it should be extremely discretionary on the part of the board. Typically, the planning board is only supposed to use discretion when it's creating plans and regulations and CIPs. When we approve applications, we're supposed to be like a little judge and jury. We're supposed to follow rules. So I think, would you be willing to work with me on trying to figure out some language that has that kind of, maybe a tiered setback based on specific criteria?
Yep, we can do
as
that.
opposed to, yeah, you can have anything between this and this, and we want you to make it a park.
Yeah. Okay, and I can do a little bit of research and see if there's something in other parts of the country that have, some flexibility, and if you guys can think of any places where you've traveled and you've seen more, the combination of historic and new where it looks like it would fit Derry, let me know what those communities are and I can take a look at that. Rhinebeck, New York has done a really good job with their regulations. And I know our TBOD was, I think, designed based on some of their regulations back in the day, so I can take a look at theirs.
I'm sorry,
again. Rhinebeck, New York comes to mind.
It was actually Reuben Ehring, who was the architect for doing Dover over back in that day.
Yep.
He's sadly passed on many years ago, but we had a civic planner and actual AIA architect who worked on that.
Yeah.
I think I'm hearing pretty much consensus that we all like the altitude that takes into account base topography, and we just have to arrive on a number we think is reasonable. Does anyone think that's not the best approach forward? And those seem to be the major issues we were discussing, the height and the front setbacks.
While we're here, let's look real quick. Studios.
Did we come to a decision on the studios item?
Oh, yeah. Did we want to add studios in the CBD?
Given the fact that housing is an issue, it seems like maybe a good idea.
Yeah, they're looking at tiny homes and they're looking at yurts now, so I wouldn't.
Yurts?
Yep, yurts.
I wouldn't give up on the studio. There may be some market for it, and if the developer doesn't want to do it, then he doesn't have to. But if he thinks there's a market for it, he can do that.
So under that section B5B, we could remove number 2. So just say, so that we take out limited to 1 or 2 bedroom units.
Yeah, I haven't actually got in front of me to figure out what the right wording is to get the intent, but I think the intent is we want to also include studios.
Okay.
What page are you on?
And I'll be honest with you, the acoustics in here are bad. I think it's all coming through the speakers off the back wall, and I'm having a hard time hearing folks, whether you be Mr. Fowler or you. So that's why I'm going,
It's on page 1 of the workshop. Yellow B.
Yep.
3.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry.
B2.
2.
No, that's
B2.
correct. Yeah, yep. So B5, B2.
And just put studio, I would say limited to studio, 1 or 2 bedroom unit.
But do we care? Like, what if someone wants to do, so like, I guess I'm asking, like, if they can put studio 1, 2, 3, whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have, in theory, a multi-unit residential where the top floor is a penthouse, right? That's a 3-bedroom. So I think the intent here originally was to
Not include studios.
not
that's
include
what-
studios,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Just open it.
well, yeah, I mean, I think demographics have changed and needs have changed. It might be more in line with good public policy to make sure there are some number of more affordable, smaller apartments as opposed to all luxury apartments,
Sure.
just because we need workforce housing.
Well, Abbott Court's got a studio.
They
They'll
do.
have studio.
They do.
Yeah, so, I mean, if they have it, I mean, I don't think we should disallow it.
No.
Okay.
I guess the question is, should we disallow 3, 4, 5 bedroom apartments? I mean, do we care?
I don't
No,
think we
es-
care.
Especially if you're going up, I don't care.
I don't think we care. And, where the move is to, I mean, it seems like we're almost trending back towards the, families all living together again. So you have multi-generational, you might have units that it might have, depending on how they bill it. Yeah.
Be a little bit, I don't know what the word is here, proactive on the housing front and require some ratio. In other words, if you have all big multi-bedroom apartments, you have to have some percentage that are one or studios just for workforce housing purposes.
We could, I know that one of the counselors had asked that the planning board consider when we were looking at housing that in buildings that had, new apartments going in, that a certain percentage be set aside for workforce housing.
The only thing I'd caution, I would not want to see deed restriction on equity. Like there are some workforce housing that cap at a certain growth.
Right.
Well, so
I wouldn't want to see any of that,
You got to be careful because there are certain words of art that imply all sorts of other legal entanglements. And workforce housing might be one of them.
Right.
So we'd have to research
Right.
how overladen that word is before we decided to use it.
There's nothing wrong with workforce housing, right? It's
No, but it has.
Workforce housing
income
housing is for me.
right.
Yeah,
What I
workforce
don't
is
wanna
for
see
me.
is there are
Yeah.
housing that you purchase, but it's capped in equity growth.
What?
Yeah.
We're a capitalist society. You can't do that.
In Manchester.
Well,
And so if you're there long enough, hopefully you can.
I mean, you're talking about
sell
rent
it.
control? You're talking about equity in a single-family owned home?
Sort of like rent control. I don't want to see that.
Okay, well, I don't know that we have, on the planning board, the authority to
Well, okay,
do
I
that
thought
anyway,
that's
so.
what maybe one of those councils was talking about, setting aside a certain percentage that would always stay at a certain price point.
I think he was talking workforce as a, I don't know, we could clarify with him, but, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm in favor of striking 5B2 and allowing the market to kind of decide what makes sense. I think if we try and guess, we're going to be wrong. And again, you're going to have a lot of situations where there could have been an improvement made or, an opportunity that is restricted. So I think allowing studios will allow the market to fill that need if that's there,
Well, I guess the only thing I throw out, and this is not developer-friendly, this is citizen policy-friendly, that there be a required amount of lower price point units in a building of a certain size.
Just to play devil's advocate, you can find a studio apartment for $6,000 a month, so there isn't necessarily a one-to-one.
Okay, but,
Yeah, Oscar Kitchen.
Mr. Wood?
Sorry, thank you. I feel like the minimum of 500 square feet would be an issue if you're including studios. That's a very large studio.
500?
Well, I mean, it has to include sleeping area, kitchen, bath area, so I don't know how much smaller it can get, but.
Not really.
I think in the
I'm just thinking about
TBOT, I think it's 400 square feet.
I just know most studios, when you see them, they're 350. They're a small unit. 500 is very large for a studio.
Those are, yeah, in this area? Or New York City? New York City?
I honestly haven't looked at studios around here, so I don't know what the square footage is, but I know it just seems like large size.
I think the ones that were built in Manchester that Red Oak did are around that like 350, 375, 400 range.
Okay. Well, so we can maybe put a pin in that and think about it. I don't think it's unusual for communities to require a certain amount of quote unquote affordable workforce housing, however you use those words without getting in legal entanglements, as part of the development, as opposed to only building the big luxury ones and going for maximum profits. You know, I know, for example, the apartments at Sky that were built for doctors and traveling nurses and, you know, high-paid medical professionals. That's great for that set of folks, but what about teachers, you know, police, fire?
Yep.
So I'm wondering whether we have an obligation to have some sort of community goal, especially in the downtown, to have availability of housing that those people could utilize.
There, yeah.
And a lot of this, I will be honest with you, was written back in the days when we didn't want more school children. Or if we had school children, we wanted big tax bills on the unit to pay for them. And that's sort of not the case currently. So sometimes it helps to understand how we got here, and I think to some extent that's where some of these size restrictions came from.
We initiated an impact fees. It's changed quite a bit since then.
So we certainly can reword that whole limited to 1 or 2 bedroom units. I think that's probably inappropriate. The question is, what do we put? Do we just leave it completely open? Or do we say, you know, if there are more than X units of more than Y total square footage, Z percentage have to be, you know, studios or 1 bedrooms? I don't know.
I'm not weighing in on whether and or how we should implement what you're suggesting about, you know, a ratio of sizes. Not commenting on that, but to the gentleman's point, the bullet 1 or sub-bullet 1 of this actually seems like the much more direct impact on affordability, so the square footage. Other than maybe like fire code implications or something like that, calling it a 1 versus 2 versus studio seems, you know.
Yeah, are there code restrictions on how many square feet per bedroom in a unit?
Per bedroom? Oh, I don't.
In other words, if I build a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom apartment, does the International Building Code have a minimum square footage for that unit?
No, I'm looking to Caroline, who's more familiar with building codes than I am. I don't believe so. I know that there's a minimum structure size, which was limited to around 200 square feet, which may have been changed in the latest update to the building codes, but that was one of the things that kind of got in the way of tiny homes, because it was like a dwelling had to be at least 200 square feet.
So that's a good point. I mean, I don't know whether we need to have that minimum square foot per unit, and if so, what it should be.
Yeah, I'm not saying what it should be or shouldn't be. I agree. Personally, 500 does seem a little large, but like if we're going to have a minimum size and we're not talking about capping a maximum, then it seems like bullet 2 is almost irrelevant, and we just set a minimum unit size through square footage might be a more straightforward.
It might be reasonable to have some minimum. I mean, most developers are really good people. But I can see in the worst case, somebody, you know, buys a house and tries to convert every bedroom into a unit by putting a little, you know, closet-sized toilet area in one corner of the room and a little teeny kitchenette in the other side, and take, you know, a 12 by 14 bedroom and try to make it into a unit. So maybe having some minimums would be reasonable.
I've seen those. Well, shared bathrooms.
Yeah, like the old hotel days. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I don't know, 500, I'm just thinking the space that I have above my garage is about 550. I don't have a bathroom there, but I'm just thinking if I put a bathroom and a kitchen in there, that's probably, I think, a good amount of space. I don't think it's overly sized.
I mean, when I was renting at Hillside Estates, back when it was Forest Hills, I had a 2-bedroom apartment that was 800 square feet.
What was it?
800
For 2-bedroom?
for 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
And there are, Mr. Wood did look, there are some units at Laraway Court that are around 364.
Right. Well, it might be good to get some input from housing people on this, people who are expert in the things that we're kind of generally trying to solve.
Okay.
Housing Finance Authority, I don't know who else might be.
Yeah, I'll get together with one of our contacts up at,
Southern New Hampshire Plan Commission.
well, there too, but I was also thinking Sarah Reitman at New Hampshire Housing, or Jerry Coogan. You know, I can get together, I can send some inquiries out, look at some guidance that they have there. They have a ton of guidance documents, and then I guess I just need to be clear, are we looking for opportunities for what I would consider workforce housing, which is for our teachers, firefighters, municipal people, or are we looking for housing that is assisted through the state?
That's what?
That has assisted funding through the state, like what we were planning for Elm Street.
Oh.
So I guess.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
that is something that, because depending on the wording in your definitions, so I just want to be clear that I'm moving this in the right direction.
I was talking about things that were free market affordable for people in the workforce.
Correct,
Which
workforce,
is why I'm
okay.
not using those terms, because I know they have definitions in state
Okay.
statute that have strings attached.
Right, okay.
And I think that it would be appropriate, you know, in one of those big, automotive dealerships along Central, corridor, or Central Street, if that gets knocked down and they build a high-rise apartment building with, 30, 40 units in it, to say, oh, you need to reserve a certain number of those units for, studios or one-bedrooms.
Yes.
If someone buys one of those New Englander homes and wants to turn like the first floor into a unit, the second floor into a unit, then obviously we're not going to have any reserves because that just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure out where the threshold would be.
Okay.
I agree with that. If we were to impose some kind of ratio, it would have to be on developments of a certain size,
Yeah.
unit count, square
Yeah.
foot, whatever that,
Yeah.
whatever that number is. Yep. I would agree with that.
And then, again, that's along with your suggestion about the setbacks being scaled based on objective criteria. If we were to request a certain number of smaller, less pricey units, again, it should be based on the scale of the development. And I think all those things are doable as long as we get the wording correct, so we don't get, we don't enact something ambiguous that will come back to bite us.
Okay. All right.
I'm seeing some nodding heads. So we have some direction on where we want to go for a next draft of potential wording that we can review?
Okay. When would you like your next workshop?
Well, I don't know. How long do you think it would take to get this stuff done?
Looking at what's on my plate right now, maybe we want to look at this for the second, I hate to drag it out, but we may
All
want
right, so
to
let's
do the
not
second
form
meeting.
a formal committee, but
Yeah.
I will help you.
Please.
You can give me homework. And I don't know whether there are other people on the board who would take other homework assignments to do research and come in with suggestions so that, yeah, you are very busy and we should somewhat share the load.
Okay, so we could look at a next workshop for March 18th, which would mean that any draft would have to be completed and ready to go into your packets by the 12th of March.
So I would be willing to help with the crazy wording on the stepwise things.
Okay.
Does anyone want to tackle the altitude thing? Mr. Pelletier? Okay, we can give you that homework. What else do we have to really worry about? Mr. Fishman, do you want to take the homework on the sizing?
Of the apartments or of the setback?
Apartments.
Yeah, I'm happy to. The 12th is coming up real close, but I'll do what I can. Yep.
Well, let's see what we can do. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect at the next reading, but if we can all contribute, maybe we can
Yeah.
get all the pieces in a decent shape.
Yeah, even if you just do like research and just say, hey, here's an idea, here's some sample wording that I found, and then we can get that all compiled and we can look at that.
Without a formal subcommittee, what's the appropriate communication
So
protocol?
everyone communicates directly with the planning director. So you have your homework assignment, you turn in to the teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, class. Okay. All right, thank you. That helps.
All right, so any closing thoughts on workshop number 3? I think we've hashed out all the major issues. Yes, Mr. Appleton.
I just have a question about one of these sections of this that's getting striked out, F2 specifically. This isn't saying that we're now prohibiting sexually oriented businesses in the CBD, correct?
So, way back when Ed Booton was still with us, he told us that we had a very hybrid zoning ordinance. It was both permissive and prohibitive in the same document. He said, that is just a bad way to do it because you're going to get taken to court. So the zoning should say, nothing is allowed anywhere in town unless you find a specific paragraph that says you can have it. Or you can say anything is allowed in town unless it's specifically prohibited. One of those two. But when you say, all these things are allowed, but all these other things are prohibited, that just, and I think Ms. Robita was slowly trying to clean up that mess.
Absolutely. Makes sense. That was it.
Cool.
Okay? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to board member comments.
The hot chocolate was really good.
It was genuinely.
You're welcome.
Bye there again.
Hearing none other, then maybe I can fish for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Malamy, seconded by Pelletier. To adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.